Guys, have you ever heard of The Ringer? The Ringer I couldn't tell you much about. It's some kind of a sports something. But they've got a meaningful presence. They got about 500,000 people. I'm staring at them right now, and I've heard of them. I've heard of The Ringer. I know they do football and some other stuff, but they delve into MMA here. And I'm not saying this to pick on them. I'm saying this because this is who did it, but they've put out their pound-for-pound ranking. They did this for MMA. So, you've heard people say everybody has a right to an opinion. You've heard that. Okay? That's stupid. And no, they don't. Just give you an example. You're going to get somebody's opinion on what is better between Coke and Pepsi. Okay? Very realistic topic that you might have found yourself in at some point. But if it then gets revealed to you that the person giving an opinion has never tried Pepsi, they've only tried Coke, you see where they don't have the right to an opinion. Is that fair? Now, what if it was athletes that went head to head and we had an outcome, but the person giving you an opinion is telling you the better of those athletes is the one that lost, and then you find out they were not aware that the contest where they went head to head had even happened? Do you see where this becomes a problem? Now, rankings are very wide open. There's not a lot you can do. If you can get a publication and you can get people to listen to you, you can put out a ranking. Generally, if you do a poor job, the people don't come back, and therefore you don't have anybody to tell this to. That's kind of the checks and balances. But there's something right next to a ranking, and it's called a seed. It's called a seeding. And every respected tournament in the world has a seed. It could be as small as your state tournament for any sport. If you live in America, any sport you live in, they will have a seeding meeting for your state tournament. All of the conferences recognized, from the National Junior College to the NAIA to NCAA Division III, whatever the hell that means, Division II, which probably shouldn't exist, and Division I, they all, for every sport, will have a seeding meeting. And I bring this to you just to let you know the importance and the power of a seed and how respected this is, just in case you're not familiar with the term. But before you will show up to that meeting, and only head coaches, one coach from each school is invited to the meeting. Before they can show up to the meeting, they will give you a list of rules. So there's not a whole lot to argue and discuss. As long as you understand the rules, you can just state, my guy should be here. And if somebody objects it, then you point to what clause in the rule in your interpretation, that guy gets the seat, and you move to the next one. And you have to do it that way, and you have to have rules. And the reason is, otherwise, just like this pound-for-pound list and every pound-for-pound list you've ever seen, it's a popularity contest. There's no pound-for-pound list, and I'll just use boxing by example because that's where this came from. Every boxing pound-for-pound list you have will match who is the biggest pay-per-view draw list. If the guy's number 4 on the pay-per-view draw, bet your ass he's going to be ranked number 4 in the world. It just works that way. When you go into a seeding meeting, there's points and there's criteria, and nothing will trump head-to-head competition. It has to be that way, and that makes perfect sense. Their list at number 1 is Alex Volkanovski. Now, that sounds a lot like the list that we all look to every Tuesday at 9 a.m. that is very respected in our industry. There's only one list that I will default to when I've ever speaking about somebody that's ranked number 1, and they also have Volkanovski at number 1. Very impressive, and I don't disagree. As long as you believe he's going to beat who they have it ranked at number 2, Islam Makhachev. If you don't think Volk is going to beat Islam, stop telling me he's number 1. It's weird, and it just doesn't work, and you look like a fool. You make the argument because Volk is undefeated and Islam has a loss. If you don't have the ability to look beyond that, you don't belong in these conversations, just so you understand. So if you think that Volk should have the number 1 ranking, but he's not going to beat Islam, but you got to keep him at number 1 because he's 14-0 versus 16-1. If that is what you think, you don't have the integrity required to be part of this process. Now, the rankings that I look to and we all look to actually has Islam at number 6. And they have moved him to 5. That's gone back and forth. I share that with you because this one has him at number 2. I'm okay with the ringer thinking he's 2 as long as the ringer thinks that Volk is going to beat him. Save that thought for another day because at number 3 in the whole world, guys, in the whole world, do you want to know who's ranked number 3? The guy ranked number 3 is the guy that just lost 22 minutes of a 23-minute fight, and his name is Leon Edwards. He's the champion of the world, and he's on one hell of a streak without a loss, right? Had that draw in there with Muhammad, but he hadn't had a loss. I do think it's interesting to put a guy who just got beat up ahead of the guy who beat him up. At number 4, they have Kamaru. Now, you could see why somebody would have to put Leon in front of Kamaru. They'd have to because he just beat him. But if they can't look beyond the fact that Kamaru has also beaten him, and they can't look beyond the fact that this wasn't a close fight. This was very dominant. It was very one-sided. And they're going to fight again. And if you predict that Leon's going to win, feel free to put him at number 3. But if you predict that Kamaru's going to win, have the balls to switch it. And they didn't do that. And I just find that interesting. Rankings take courage. They don't just take intelligence. Number 5, they have a world champion, Aljo Sterling. Number 6, they have Alex Pereira. Now, isn't that interesting? Alex Pereira, who has dominated his way to a world championship. He not only finished the world champion in the championship fight, he finished the number 6 guy in the world in the number 1 contenders fight just to get there. 6 matches in total, 5 within the organization. Stomped them all. And they got him down there at number 6. That seems a little bit low. Seems a little bit surprising, quite frankly. But they got him at 6. Now, I would have to ask them the same question. Do you believe that Alex can beat Chimaev? Because I noticed Chimaev is nowhere on your list. But the odds makers in Vegas had him at a 4-1 favorite over the guy you did put on your list. That would be interesting. Now, Charles Oliveira comes in at number 7. Submitted 8 times. A jiu-jitsu practitioner who has tapped out 8 times, who lost his belt to a scale. There's a lot of ways you can lose, right? I mean, there's many a slip from a cup to a lip. You lost your belt to a scale. What? But they got him ranked at number 7. And Charles is awfully good. I could certainly understand where he would come in at number 7. But to put him at number 7, you've got to look at the present and you've got to ignore 8 times that he surrendered. Which I don't think you're wrong to do. I just noticed you didn't do that for the 7 that you put in front of him. You move down to Brandon Moreno. Brandon Moreno is number 9 in the world. Let's just skip that one. Let's just go to number 10 where you got Yuri Prochazka. Now, you don't have the sitting reigning champion of the world. You don't have the guy that was 30 seconds from beating Prochazka. Already beaten him on points, just had to run out the clock. You don't have him. You have Prochazka himself, and I don't have a problem with it. I think that he's pretty damn good. I really do. But as I went through that list of 10, Volk, Makhachev, Edwards, Usman, Sterling, Pereira, Oliveira, Adesanya, Moreno, and Prochazka, you want to know what's missing? And it's not who's missing. You want to know what's missing? A heavyweight. I cannot think of a time in history when we've done a top 10 list and not had a heavyweight. You'll see these lists, and most people, they'll slip a girl or 2 on there because they don't want it, right? They just say, whoa, hey, whoa, whoa. So they'll just slip a heavyweight. They'll kind of move it around. They'll do these things. There's not a ton of courage within these rankings. But they didn't put a heavyweight on here. Quite frankly, there's nowhere you could. And of everything the Ringer did, and all the faults that I have with this, I mean, it's not the world's worst list. It's very faulted. Right at the top. The guy that you have at number one, you don't think's going to win in 2 weeks. Right there, we have a problem. You don't have a heavyweight on there. You're not wrong to not. You're right to not. But it comes off the page. This is the easiest that division has ever been. This is the worst that division has ever been. A guy who's 1-1 is a number one contender against a guy who's never done it. I think that's interesting. And I think for the weakness, for the cowardness that is on the list done by the Ringer, that's one thing they got right.